Life is hard, and there are a million voices and distractions coming in from every direction. But the voice that matters most is God's. Join us as we discuss God's Word and how that applies to our everyday lives. It's time to dive in. So, girl, listen up. Welcome to Girl Listen Up, a podcast of Build Up Ministries. My name is Jennai, and sitting next to me is the lovely Melissa.
Hey everyone, I am so excited that you are here joining us. Whether you're listening or watching for the first time or have tuned in before, we want to say how incredibly grateful we are for you to be choosing to spend your time with us.
Yes, thank you so much. Now, in case you are unfamiliar with Girl Listen Up, this is a podcast designated to speak from and to a younger generation about life, the challenges, and the situations they uniquely face in a way that connects to God and lives out the faith well. But not just for them, it's actually for others as well.
That's right, Janae. One of the reasons why I wanted to be a part of this project is because I do a lot of mentoring myself. So while this idea started with targeting those in high school, college, or just beginning their career, it's been fun to see how many women who love, lead, and mentor these young women are gaining someone from their perspective too.
So, girl, listen up. Today's episode is on
Comparison.
comparison is such a big issue that we are going to talk about it in two different episodes. So, part one will be all about the different types and effects of comparison in our lives. And part two will focus on how we overcome that comparison. And Melissa, I feel like it's safe to say we've all felt comparison before. What does
Yes.
comparison stem from?
Yeah, so comparison at its core is just what we think we're supposed to be at. So there's these external factors that come into play: social media, our friend groups, our families, books we read, TV we watch, all these things that are kind of defining what we think is what's to be right. And then we have this internal processing side where we're trying to figure out, hey, is this where I'm supposed to be at? What am I doing the right thing? Do I look the right way? Am I meeting the standard? So it creates this different thought process in our brain as we kind of focus on comparison. So, Janae, what are some examples that you've experienced with comparison?
Yeah, definitely the one that's most prevalent right now is my comparison of lifestyle. So in my early 20s, and that's around college age. And for me, I feel like the expectation was go to college, have a career lined up right afterwards, maybe get married and start a family right away, especially if you went to my school, ring by spring, if you know what that means. And I definitely did not have that lined up right away. My life did not look like what expectations I thought there was for me. And so I was kind of in panic mode. I was going through a really tough time, and I just felt like I was failing at life since my life did not shape up to what others had and what expectations I thought were on me.
Man, I relate to that a lot too, just in a little bit different aspect. So, I feel like I'm hitting my 30s now, and my big thing is that like we haven't started a family, my husband and I yet, and not because of choice, just due to infertility, but everyone around me is starting families, buying houses, and I feel like I'm behind. So you talked about you felt stuck or panicked, but I was like, man, I'm behind. What is going on? Where am I going? Did I make the right choice? Am I making the right decisions? And really put this idea that I'm not doing something right in this. So I've been stuck there for sure. But like kind of another example I know that I've dealt with for comparison is the body image side of things. Um, Women are exploited on social media, on TV, everywhere that we look. And I feel like that there's a standard that we were expected to have to be considered beautiful. If we're beautiful, we're liked, we're popular, we're within the in group. But that's not what it is. And I remember just getting so caught up in like, this is how I think of myself. Here's how I felt my identity was in. But it just wasn't where it needed to be. So I definitely felt those external factors determining who I am, what that looked like, especially at a young age, and even now still dealing with sometimes. What about you, Janae?
Yeah, I've definitely compared my looks to other, especially the big one is I have curly hair. So when I was younger, a lot of my friends had straight hair, and so I wanted straight hair. I thought it was so pretty. It still is. Um, so I would straighten my hair a lot, and that kind of got to a lot of work, especially because my mom had to do it for me. So eventually, I just stopped taking care of my curly hair because it was just too much. I didn't like dealing with it, and it got so bad to the point that I actually had to cut off all of my hair in high school, and kind of had to relearn to love my curls that way. And also another one is that I'm a younger sister, and so I have an older sister,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like the standard, not standard, but like usually you look up to the siblings that are older
Mm-hmm.
than you. And so in high school, my sister got a lot of attention from guys, and everyone would always tell me, "Oh, she's so beautiful, she's so pretty," and she is. Don't get me wrong, but in my mind, I was like, "Oh, that's how it should be. Like, I'm not getting attention from guys, so that means I'm not pretty."
Mm-hmm.
And no one was really coming up to me and telling me I'm pretty. So I definitely was like, something's wrong with me. Why do I not look the way she does? Like,
Mm-hmm.
am I not pretty in that type of way as well?
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is through these different experiences, it's like we almost felt like we weren't good enough and we felt stuck. So how has like living with comparison, like how's that affected you currently?
Yeah, I think I had a lot of self confidence issues growing up, and honestly, a lot of self doubt as well. I kind of feel like it was holding me back in the aspect of like my lifestyle comparison and thinking that I wasn't where I should be. And it really held me back from having that confidence and leading into what God was
Mm-hmm.
having for me and what He was calling me into.
Yeah. I know, like I mentioned, that I felt like behind. And I think that if we get caught being stuck in the past, we don't actually get to see what's exciting looking forward. So, like with mine, where I think that like I should have kids, I should have a family now. How cool it is that since I don't have kids right now, what kind of opportunity do I have that God's had in store for me? He has a different journey for me, and He has a different path for me to follow that His purpose will be fulfilled. And sometimes I get if I get so caught up in the past of like I don't have this, I don't have that, I am not actually maximizing what God has in store for me overall too.
Yeah, that's so good. And you know, someone who I really relate to in the Bible is Moses.
Mm-hmm.
I think that story just helped me so much in just having confidence in who God has called me to be. A little context about Moses
Mm-hmm.
is that at that time, the Jews were enslaved by the Egyptians, and God was calling Moses to go talk to Pharaoh about setting his people free. And when God was talking to Moses about this, Moses was like, "Who am I like to go talk to Pharaoh? Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not good at speaking. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough." And I related to that so much because that's what my thought process was. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
good enough. So just knowing that, honestly, I am not good enough, but with God and through God, and if I
Mm-hmm.
rely on Him, I can be good enough.
Yeah. What do you think will happen if you just stay stuck in that comparison like right now?
Yeah, if I stayed stuck, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. I mean, I've been called to leadership roles that I never thought I would be called to before. And this podcast specifically, I don't know if I would have the courage enough to do this without me having to rely on God and kind of overcome all my fears and anxieties.
Yeah, imagine yourself like 4 months ago and deciding to let comparison rule your life. Like you wouldn't be here right now. Which that's it's so exciting to know that like when you overcome these things, you get to be in a place where you get to like fulfill what His true purpose He has for you, which is really really neat. I know for me, I think about the story of Hannah and when she because I have that infertility journey that I've been going through, and she I remember she would come to the steps and just cry out like, Lord, give me like I want to like have a baby. I want to have a son or daughter, anything like that. And I think about she probably even felt those not only the longing that she had in her heart to become a mom, but the longing like she's being compared to like with her friends and her groups that she had around her, like imagining them all be able to have children and just being in kind of a situation around that. So, but because of her patience, because of the time, she was able to see she had Samuel who ended up anointing David, who really sets forth a great story within the Old Testament that if she hadn't been patient or she tried to do things her own way or decided to be stuck in different situations, she would not be able to fulfill her true purpose that God had in store for her, which I just really relate to as well.
Yeah, that's so good. Do you think, how have you learned from that and just being patient and waiting on God's timing?
Yeah, so I think that I mentioned a little bit earlier too that I wouldn't be able to do what God has in store for me now. If I was sit waiting and just be like, I'm not in the right place, I'm not in the right position, like, why don't I have kids yet? Where am I at? That I would be stuck in the past and not actually fulfilling. So now I get to actually mentor, get to be part of a podcast like this. I get to do more at my job and what I do in my work, where I really get to engage and teach people to be the best versions of themselves. Um, Serve in my church and do different things around that and serve my family in different ways I never got to. So I think that if I let that rule my life, then I want to be where I'm at now and be able to make the relationships and friendships that I have now overall.
That is so good. And if you guys are listening, and you relate to stories, you are not alone. And there's so much comparison that goes on. And so we just want you to know that we see you, you are heard, and again, you're not alone. I feel like that's such a
Yes.
big one. I feel like I was stuck in like, oh, I'm the only one feeling this. And that is
Yes.
so not true. As you can hear, we both have things
Yes,
that we have
yes.
went through. And so I'm excited because in part 2, we are going to talk more about the hope that we have in overcoming this comparison in our lives.
Yeah, we're actually going to be able to hear from another mentor here that's going to really speak to life about how we can overcome comparison and what that looks like. And we're going to learn a lot from that session as well, too, which we're really excited for.
Yes, thank you so much for listening today. Melissa and I are so grateful for you taking time to connect and tune in on a deeper level and chat about the realities of what it's like to be a young adult in this ever-changing world.
Yeah, so be sure to check out our Instagram at Built Up Ministries or our website, builtup.org, to stay up to date on all the upcoming podcasts, along with some amazing content being posted weekly. But we'll be excited to see you next episode.
Thank you for joining us for today's podcast episode. To learn more about Built Up Ministries or the Girl Listen Up podcast, head to www.builtup.org.